The barren and cold wasteland lay scorched, cluttered with armor, once leading heroic and noble charges, now broken and laid to rust. For the past few weeks the forces of chaos and those of the Imperium of Man have fought for supremacy, resulting in the front line only shifting every so often. It seemed like an everlasting stalemate, leaving many dead on both sides. Another attack was imminent. This time the Blood Pact charged ahead, its mighty tanks acting as their cavalry. But the Imperial Guard was strong and well defended, ripping into the flesh of their opponents, and the bouldering thunderous turrets setting ablaze the armor and denting its metal harness. Through the smoke and fire, the Blood Pact continued the charge for the glory of chaos. Their heaviest armor was feared amongst the Imperial Guard, but they had their bunkers to hide in as a child hides behind its mother's skirt. With so little cover, the infantry used the craters to escape death instead. Though taking heavy losses, they managed to take out a few Imperial infantry here and there. The mounted turrets were relentless, putting the first attack wave to a halt. A second attack might prove better results, as the enemy's spirits, morale, and ammunition might have diminished. But those fighting for the Emperor were battle-hardened, forcing those in red once again to crawl through the dust. Nevertheless, did they indeed lose men in some areas that now proved easier to overthrow. More forces were rolling in, as the Imperial Guard desperately tried to hold. At the flanks, several bunkers were about to fall. Weakened by infantry fire and armor barrages, they were finally torched by the flamers. For many had suffered the same fate on their side, as those in and around the tanks were set on fire after being damaged by the Imperial Guard. The troops of the Blood Pact crept closer, but they were still able to hold. Bodies of fallen soldiers covered the ground. Both armies were now close enough to where infantry grenades and dancing fire of the flamers could reach one another. Many bunkers were taken out and set ablaze, as suddenly the ground shook as another terrifying force had assembled at the edge of the battlefield. The Iron Warriors, treacherous but feared for their strength and brutality, gazed out over their chosen scene of war. They marched onward to bring death to the Imperium of Man in the name of chaos. These machines did not need tanks to aid them. Their armor and physique was enough to conquer the enemy. The Grey Giants began their pass over the battlefield as they started to take the Imperial Guard under fire. The Imperial Guard was terrified. There was no way they could win against these brutes. Their armor was too thick to penetrate, their chest plates too broad to dent. The color of red made way for that of gray and yellow. Men threw everything they had against the forces of chaos, but it was for naught. Unscathed by their weaponry, the Iron Warriors demanded their share of blood from the opposing force. They drew near, increasing their urge and desire to kill and decreasing the guard's morale. The men tried to keep the warriors at bay with fire, but it was in vain. Some of the bunkers fell once more, as those who remained torched anything and anyone in the area, friend or foe. The wicked fires fueled the warriors' spirits within, as they returned the favor with cleansing fires of their own. Warriors assembled at the bunkers, impaling those inside, or roasting them like the pieces of meat they perceived them as. Screams of pain originating from the mouths of men were as the sweetest of songs to the warriors. Another bunker turned to ash, its inhabitants devoured by the blistering hot flames. There was no way to resist, no hope to win, and no embrace by a glorious death. But then, as angels sent by God himself, stood the mighty Space Marines, proud in their looming crimson and golden armor, ready to banish the forces of chaos. And they stood not alone, for they brought their horsemen. The Imperial Guard's forces could not believe their eyes. To some, the Space Marines were like a myth. Only legends told of regular men fighting side by side the mighty Space Marine, let alone the Blood Ravens. Their presence revived fallen spirits and hopes of victory. The Iron Warriors had met their equal, the first falling by the hands of justice from the Space Marines. Those in red and gold took it to the traitors, as they stopped the march of terror and would force them back to their side of the battlefield. Their armor, mighty and robust, crippling the warriors that stood in the line of fire. Then the Space Marines entered the battlefield, forcing the enemy to play by their rules. They covered each other constantly, like true brothers of war. The warriors were too far to do significant damage, but the pushing tactics seemed to work as the battlefront shifted. The armor was still in reach as its weapons silenced those who were foolish enough to clutch together on the open field. Others took care of the few remaining Blood Pact, who were like insects compared to the heroic Crusaders. The outcome was set. This day would go to that of men, with the twisted demonic forces being pushed back into the darkness. The bunkers were secured, paid with the blood of many fighting for the Empire. Flamers cleansed the battlefield, creating a wall of fire to prove their dominance over the forces of evil. But chaos cannot be controlled, and there shall come a day for retribution when both forces will fight again.